Okay, well, my name is Marcus Rosas. My involvement with Imparja Cup goes back 21 years this year. I've played 16 years as a player with the Catherine teams and 5 years with the 5 years umpiring now. I've now taken on board an umpiring role with Northern Territory Cricket, with the Imparja Cup. By doing that, it keeps me involved with the game. How I started was I've always had a sporting background, played many years of rugby league, rugby, all the football codes, AFL, rugby union. And then when I retired from that at the ripe old age of 32, I thought my sporting career had come to an end. But back in 1999, 2000, I was approached by a young lady by the name of Miss Rose Peckham, who's still in Catherine, and she asked me about if I was able to get a. She spoke to me initially about Imparja Cup, and it was all new to me. She said, "Are you able to get a group of 8 guys together and play an Indigenous Cricket carnival in Alice Springs?" And I did. I went out and recruited 8 guys back in 2000, 2001, and we ventured down here for Imparja Cup all those years ago. So that was my introduction to meeting the custodians of Imparja, Rossi, Jack and Mara Williams, and Mr. Shane Franey. I met those two way back then in 2000, and from there I worked in a number of industries in Catherine, the mining game, but my main operator, the Toyota agency. I also worked with 16, 17 years with Sport and Rec. At the time of Imparja Cup coming around, I was employed by Department of Sport and Rec, so that sort of aligning myself with Imparja Cup and Sport and Rec sort of went hand in hand, and it gave me the time to sort of promote the game. So I ended up coming down here for 2-3 years, bringing a Catherine side, and I then went back to Catherine, and part of my role was to go out and train community members how to be sport and rec officers, how to be a basketball umpire, how to be a basketball scorer, all the people behind the scenes that you need, how to run their own competitions, and that was part of my role. And then with the introduction of Imparja Cup, I was sitting in one of the local hotels in one of the communities in Timber Creek in 2003, and as I looked around, I saw all these old cricket mementos. There was old toilet seats for the Spin the Dummy Awards, but it was all aimed around a cricket that was played back in the 1970s, all these cricket sports awards. So I said to the proprietor at the time, the owner, Mr. Clive Stone, I said, "Clive, I see a lot of cricket trophies. What's cricket played out here?" And he said, "Marcus," he said, "back in the 90s, cricket was probably our biggest game." Taking that on board, what Clive had said in my introduction to Imparja Cup, I thought, well, wait on a minute. How about I start forming a number of these community carnivals, miniature Imparja Cups? So with that, I then aligned myself, using my work in Sport and Rec. I then went to Northern Territory Cricket. The development officer back then was Mr. Greg Alden, who's the current coach of the Northern Territory Imparja Cup team. I went to Greg and I proposed and told him about this proposal that I had about doing these miniature carnivals, a number of these miniature carnivals, promoting the game of cricket, in hoping then we could grow the game of cricket out in the regions. Greg came down, and those instrumental talks we had with the local stakeholders back then, we sat down, and that was our process, was to identify communities and go and talk to those key stakeholders. And we did that, and we formed the first Dingo Cup back in 2003. From there it went to the Nipaluk Cup, which is in Catherine, the Barra Cup in Borroloola, and then it started branching out to the Rossi Williams Shields, to there's community cricket carnivals now in Tiwi Island. So what we established back then has sort of grown, and that's what my aim was to do, was start at a grassroots level and bring the game forward. And over the years, I think we were pretty successful in doing that, because in years gone by we had something up to like 53 teams ventured here at Imparja Cup over the years. That's it now. Like I said, I've been coming 23 years. This is 2020. In all those 21 years, I've never seen rain, and what's happened? We bring rain. So there's something new that's happened with Imparja Cup every year. I come to Imparja Cup mainly to meet and greet old friends through a game of cricket, and that's my motto that I carry with me right around the world. From Imparja Cup, I've gone bigger. Now pick a team of Indigenous cricketers and I take them overseas, and I introduced Indigenous cricket to overseas in the Asian cricket sixes carnivals. So we're expanding. I now work with the No More program, and that's a form of just creating an awareness of domestic violence against our women. Working in partnership with Northern Territory Cricket and in the No More program, we now have the opportunity now to talk to all these regional teams about creating this awareness of domestic violence. And with that, I'm also thinking out and thinking, overseas. So that's Marcus Rosas in a nutshell.